Good evening everyone. For Telesur English, I'm Sarah Begum in Caracas, Venezuela. Cuba and the United States opened 2 days of historic talks in Havana today. The meetings follow the historic decision by Cuban leader Raúl Castro and US President Barack Obama to normalize diplomatic relations. US Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Alex Lee and Cuban Foreign Ministry official Josefina Vidal sat down for the first day of closed-door talks, which will focus on immigration issues. Cuba is raising concerns about the policy of sending back immigrants who arrive by sea, known as the wet foot, dry foot policy.
The Cuban delegation has raised our concerns about the Cuban Adjustment Act and the dry food, wet food policy that it is applied for Cuban immigrants, that in our conception, in our opinion, is the main stimulus for the illegal immigration.
On Wednesday, a delegation of US senior administration officials arrived in Cuba for the first of many talks to come between the two governments. Correspondent Alexandra Hall has more about what this means for the reopening of relations.
The last time such a high-level U.S. government official visited the island was in the 1970s. First on the agenda, immigration and the logistics of reopening a U.S. embassy in Havana. In his State of the Union address on Tuesday, President Obama congratulated his administration for making history.
When what you're doing doesn't work for 50 years, it's time to try something new.
The U.S. Departments of Commerce and Transportation recently made it possible for certain types of travel to Cuba. New regulations will ease telecommunications business there, but real change has yet to come.
It's important to keep in mind that U.S. embargo is still in place, and so there's not going to be a huge flood of U.S. trade or any U.S. investment. That's all still illegal.
Illegal and, according to activists, unproductive.
Long-term, what needs to happen is there needs to be full economic interaction with Cuba. It's 90 miles away. It's a historic trading partner with the United States.
So long as the U.S. government uses the blockade, which is an act of war that deprives the Cuban people of food, medicine, what they're entitled to live, that's still war against Cuba.
But matters of foreign policy only go so far without congressional approval.
The president has said that he wants to open a debate with Congress about lifting the embargo, but the Republican leaders in both the House and Senate have come out against the president's policy. So I don't think they're going to allow legislation to lift the embargo to get to the floor of either the House or Senate.
The current round of diplomatic talks will continue until Thursday. Meanwhile, 6 in 10 Americans say that they support ending the blockade, while for Cuba, 3 priorities remain: getting rid of Guantanamo, lifting the embargo, and making sure that Cuba is removed from the U.S. state sponsors of terrorism list. In Washington, I'm Alexandra Hall for Telesur.
Thanks to Alexandra. In Bolivia, as part of the inauguration process for his new term in office, Bolivian President Evo Morales addressed a ceremony at the pre-Columbian ruins of Tiwanaku. Morales is Bolivia's first indigenous president in a country where nearly 60% of the population is indigenous. He vowed to continue promoting Andean socialism and indigenous values. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto is under further scrutiny for buying property in the state of Mexico from a local developer who then won millions of dollars worth of public work contracts. According to documents obtained by the Wall Street Journal, while Peña Nieto served as governor of the state of Mexico from 2005 to 2011, he bought property by local developer Roberto San Roman Whitaker, who then won $100 million in government projects. We go now to Mexico, where our correspondent Clayton Kahn has more on the case of the missing 43 students.
Yesterday, Mexico's Attorney General Jesus Murillo Karam commented to reporters after a national forum on the country's criminal justice system that, quote, "Statements, evidence, and everything else makes me believe that they were killed there," referring to the 43 Ayotzinapa students in the Guerrero state town of Cocula. Now, this comes after the Attorney General's office announced that DNA testing on 17 charred human remains in Innsbruck, Austria, have not been able to be identified due to the high temperatures in which they were subjected to. However, this past December 8th, the forensic analysis in Austria said they positively ID'd the remains of one of the students, Alexander Mora. The authorities claim that the students were illegally detained by Iguala and Cocula police, handed over to the drug gang Guerreros Unidos, and executed, with the remains being burned. However, families and supporters say the investigation has had many holes, continuing their demand for the return alive of the missing students. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for Telesur, here in Mexico City.
The mystery over the death of a prosecutor investigating the bombing of the Argentina-Israeli Mutual Association in 1994 continues. For an insight on the case, we go to our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Leonel Poblete.
On Monday night, Argentine President Cristina Fernandez wrote a letter and posted it on her official website and Facebook page, where she expressed her sorrow in relation to the death of Special Prosecutor Alberto Nisman and raised questions about the investigation of the Argentine-Israeli Association mutual bombing, which occurred in 1994. Now, in the letter, she refutes all the arguments which have been put forward in recent days and the accusation filed against her, some government officials and political leaders by the now deceased Nisman. She reiterated that the trial for the cover-up of the 1994 bombing of the Argentine-Israeli Association Mutual, which is planned to go ahead this year, and after almost 15 years and 12 magistrates who excuse themselves from the case, it seeks to divert, lie, cover and confuse the population in the same manner as was done with the main trial on the bombing, which commenced 21 years ago. Cristina Fernandez also raised questions such as who ordered Nisman to return to the country on January 12, leaving his little daughter on her own at Madrid's Barajas airport, interrupting his family holidays and suddenly returning during the judicial recess, and without notifying the judge in the case, filing then a complaint of 350 folios, which were obviously prepared long before. Reporting from Buenos Aires, Leo Poblete Goluti, Telesur.
Thanks, Leo. And here in Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro is giving his State of the Nation speech. He has mentioned the economic war on the country by the opposition, but has promised deeper investment in the economy, housing and health to advance Venezuela's socialist revolution. US President Barack Obama on Tuesday declared America has turned the page on years of war and economic hardship in a populist-tinged State of the Union address that set up the battle to succeed him. But many said the speech was more about politics than leadership.
I think he's approached this like in a poker game. He's going to bluff and push as hard as he can and then get what he can get. And basically, in the end, blame the Republicans as the Democratic candidates for the presidency in 2016 will. They'll blame the Republicans for not doing these things.
Russia responded despairingly to President Barack Obama's annual State of the Union address, claiming it had showed that the United States wanted to dominate world affairs, according to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Отношения между Москвой и Вашингтоном серьезно обострились.
There's just one thing at the heart of their philosophy. We are number one, and the rest should acknowledge that. This is a bit out of date and does not correspond to modern realities. It shows that the United States wants to dominate the world.
Вопросом, так и на мировой арене, где наши страны несут особую.
In Greece, the nation is preparing for elections on Sunday, which could see anti-austerity party Syriza win the presidency. Greece has the highest debt in the Eurozone, totaling $368 billion. There had been some fears that if Syriza wins, Greece will leave the Eurozone, but Syriza had stated that they most likely will stay in the zone if the EU plays ball on debt reduction.
Syriza and Greece will negotiate and try to defend its right within the Eurozone and within Europe. There is no other way of escaping the crisis. We will not give joy to some people by saying we are leaving. We will fight within Europe.
Zambian police fired tear gas to disperse supporters of the leading opposition candidate in a hotly contested presidential election race after the announcement of results was suspended. A number of Hakainde Hichilema's supporters in the United Party for National Development were arrested and bundled into a police van. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe admitted Wednesday it was a race against time to free 2 hostages snatched by Islamist militants who are demanding $200 million for their lives. A defiant Abe said he would not bow to terrorism.
Japan resolutely condemns the deplorable acts of terrorism which we are seeing in the hostage taken by ISIL and also in the shooting incident in Paris. Japan and the United Kingdom can cooperate together to fight against terrorism.
Tensions between Palestine and Israel are once again on the rise following the killing of 2 men earlier this week by Israeli security forces. A Palestinian man on Wednesday stabbed and killed Israeli citizens at a bus station in Tel Aviv. Our correspondent Noor Harazin is following the latest.
Leadership of the Hamas movement claimed Wednesday morning that the Tel Aviv stabbing attack that same morning was a natural reaction by people suffering under occupation. Deputy head of Hamas, Musa Abu Marzouk, said that there is no bigger terrorism than occupying people, stealing their land, freedom and dignity. The incident involved a Palestinian man wounding at least 17 passengers in an attack on a Tel Aviv bus station this morning. Israeli police said that 5 people were moderately to seriously wounded, while 4 were lightly injured. It was not immediately clear if all victims had been stabbed or if they included some suffering from shock. Ahmed Bahar, deputy head of Palestinian Legislative Council, also described the attack as self-defense. He claimed in a statement that the negotiations path followed by Palestinian Authority was a waste of time and a chance for Israel to expand its settlements. Palestinian security sources identified the attacker as 23-year-old Hamza Matrouk from Tulkarem refugee camp in the northern West Bank. Noor Harazin, Teleso TV.
Thanks to Noor. And tensions still remain after the Israeli assassination of Iranian and Hezbollah leaders in the south of Syria over the weekend. We go to Nashwan Abdullah for this report.
Syria's Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim stated that the priority now at this stage is to respond the Israeli allies in Syria. Israel appears to be intervening to prolong the crisis affecting Syria as much as possible.
I wonder, is Israel that stupid to carry out such aggression even when it knows it will not be without a response? Why?
The Syrian people seeking the end of the crisis in their country are wondering what the response will be from Syria, Iran and Hezbollah.
The Syrian people are waiting for the response to the Israeli attack from the excess of resistance. We demand it takes place at a suitable time and place. It is now an open war.
On the other side, the Israeli army has raised its security alert to a very high level and has mobilized its elite forces to the borders and moved the Iron Dome rocket system to its northern borders. Nashwan Abdullah, Telesur, Damascus, Syria.
We end today in sports. In tennis, third seed Rafael Nadal of Spain battled through illness and poor timing on his ground strokes to lurch into the 3rd round of the Australian Open. Nadal appeared to be affected by something in the 2nd set as he sweated profusely and took his time between changeovers before calling for the doctor early in the 3rd set. Meanwhile, 2nd seed Roger Federer survived the 1st set scare before he ramped up his performance and advanced safely to the 3rd round victory over Italian journeyman Simone Bolelli. Catch more on these and other stories on our website, telesortv.net/English. For Telesor English, I'm Sarah Begum. Have a good night.